morning. How's everybody today? Hope you all have been having a awesome week. Having a little bit of my matcha tea with some coconut oil powder. You can buy it actually as a powder, so it makes it taste like a nice creamer. And yeah, it's good. It's very healthy for you. It's non-dairy. Hey, Mike, what's up, man? Been a while. How are you doing? Good to see you. Hi, Lopez. Hey, Lope. Hi, Sarah. Hey. So it's a Thursday. Goodness me. Later on today, I've got a whole list of different media people I'm supposed to be meeting. So that's going to be, I was going to say exhausting, but let's say wonderful. Anyway, oh, you're just back from a long road trip and you're from Brazil. Very cool. Very cool. Oh, where did you go on your road trip? I went on a little road trip and I'm probably going to go on another road trip a bit later in a week or two, probably another couple weeks. I'm thinking I'd like to go up to Salt Lake City and visit all my friends up there. So, hey, Jay, nice to see you, man. All right. So today I thought I will talk about, oh, you went to South Dakota. Wow. Okay. That's ways. How was it? Some of these places that I haven't been. Hey, Jay. So I thought today we could talk about something that I've been talking to some of the different media people about. And I actually need to come up with a little more witty ways to describe possible media segments. I've not been blessed with that gene for witty titles to things, but a few of the ones I've come up with after quite a while, they tend to be good, but it doesn't come that easily to me. So Mike says your life is a road trip. Yes, my life is a road trip. That is very true. COVID actually probably kept me in one place for the longest period of time ever in a very, very, very long time. Like not actually traveling anywhere for about a year. That was an amazing feat for COVID to do that, because normally I would go somewhere every month. Bye, Jay. Hey, Yago. Oh, you must be where it's nighttime. You say good night. Okay, good night. So let's. I'm going to talk today about what is the Me Too movement missing. What has been going on? So the Me Too movement has been a massive movement, particularly in the US, but I think it's also sparked similar movements worldwide where women are speaking up and identifying people who abused them, or saying, identifying people who raped them or sexually assaulted them or perhaps sexually harassed them, right? Like Weinstein, right? He's a big sort of villain in this story of somebody who was using or compelling women to engage in sexual activity in order for them to be able to get roles in movies and really do their job, right? That's not like part of what your job is. And that's a huge issue when people are compelling you to do things that is not in your job description in order to get work, right? In order to be able to do what your job is. And there are other things like that that are happening today if you look around, right? Where people are saying, in order to work, this is something you're professionally qualified for. You go in, you say, okay, I'm willing to work. This is my resume. This is what I want to do. And they're like, okay, well, we see you can do this, but unless you in some way sacrifice your body, your sexuality, your integrity, we're not going to give you the job, right? And that's the issue, where it's not based on your skill, your ability, and your willingness to work, but on something else that is hidden or under the table, right? That's not a true measure of your ability to do your work. And you have to ask yourself what's going on when we allow businesses to impose these kinds of regulations, right? Or these kinds of requirements that have nothing to do with your work. It's very much very similar to discrimination, right? When you're saying, okay, I'm not going to hire you because of the color of your skin, not your ability to work or any of the core things that are important to you actually being able to do the job, right? That discrimination can be based on race, it can be based on gender. So, and this is all coming into the same type of thing. So, but the thing I want to talk about today is, what is the Me Too movement missing? So the Me Too movement is an incredibly important movement. I think it did get derailed somewhat, but it was incredibly important that women began to speak out, right? Because as I said in my book, there's so many reasons why women keep quiet. Hey, Luxar, good to see you. I missed you too. Okay, I'm doing great. So there's lots of reasons why women don't speak out, why they're afraid to speak out historically. So the Me Too movement, by women coming together and speaking out together, they were able to actually encourage women who were very afraid to speak up and to stand up against their abusers and to actually call people out, right? So this was incredibly important, and it definitely started a movement where the men became more aware of what they were doing and perhaps even more afraid of actually being abusers in that way, which is a good thing. Okay. Mike asks, who will guard the guards? Yes, that's a very good question. And I think the key to that is that it has to be based on principle, right? On principle, not just on the guards guarding the guards, right? It's not just on other humans, but it has to be, when we are creating these types of, I guess, parameters for behavior, a code of conduct, a code of behavior, has to be based on fundamental principles. So that's what I talk about, is the fundamental principles of the thing. And one of the things the Me Too movement was missing is, although it was really good that people were speaking up, they didn't have a clear code for how we should behave. So it was mostly focused on how we shouldn't behave. It was mostly focused on the negative, which definitely needed to come out. People needed to speak up about this. But the issue that happens both there and in a lot of these situations where violations occur is people are struggling to articulate what the violation was, what was violated, right? Because oftentimes the violation itself is something where they were like, well, that's just kind of part of culture. Well, I'm not violating you. Everybody, grabs your ass, or, that's just normal for guys to do that to women. That kind of an attitude, right? Or she wanted it, or whatever that kind of attitude is. Oh, she was drunk, so she deserved it. Or she dressed sexy, so she was looking for it, right? That type of, it's a cultural attitude. And when you don't have a clear boundary that says, no, this is the parameters that we are working within, then it becomes really difficult for the victims, for the people who are advocating on their behalf, to actually articulate what went wrong. And even for the abuser themselves to even understand what went wrong. So that's why I talk about these principles, right? Which is understanding, if we understand how that interaction should be taking place, then we can make sure that it's happening in a positive way. It doesn't have to always be a negative, don't do this, don't do that, men are bad, blah, 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 right? Because that's not the truth. The truth is, how do we create this? How do we let men and women come together in a positive way and have great interaction and good relationships and good sex and be able to enjoy that part of life and each other? But what are the boundaries that we put in place? What are the code of conduct that allow people to do that without violating and hurting each other? That is the real key. So That's what I've been talking about. That's what I've been teaching. And when I was talking about that in my book, I actually had a whole chapter about how do we talk to men about this in a way that makes it kind of fun and understandable for them, right? And basically, when you understand the 5 principles that govern any type of relationship, any type of exchange, any type of when people are coming together to create some kind of exchange, whether that's a sexual exchange, whether that's dating, whether that's business, the 5 fundamental principles are actually the same. They're exactly the same. That's what's so cool about this. When you really understand the universal sense, you only need to know those 5 principles and you will be acting correctly, whether you're acting in a business relationship or a personal relationship or a sexual relationship. And that's kind of the brilliance of getting down to the core, right? So let's apply that to, let's say we're talking about, 2 people who meet in these types of situations, right? One of the key problems that happens with these types of things when you're talking about the Me Too movement and stuff like that is an abuse of power. If a person, typically the man, but not always the man, sometimes it's the woman who is in the position of power and is abusing her position of power, right, in order to try to get someone to do something for them in a sexual way, right? And that's a big issue, okay? Traditionally, it has been more the men that have done that because they've been in the position of power, and that just seems to be something that it was sadly accepted in society based on the position and role of women. But it's not only men that do it. So we need to be aware of that. Anytime someone violates these principles, that's a violation. The beauty of the principles is that it gives us a positive way to talk about it, right? So when 2 people come together, let's give an example, right? Let's say 2 people meet at a bar, right? And they are talking together, they're conversing together. Well, then the 5 principles are you make an offer, right? Somebody makes an offer. The other person has to accept that offer. There needs to be an actual exchange of value, no undue pressure, right? And a mutual understanding of what that offer is. So how does that look in a relationship, right? In a personal relationship. And when I talk about undue pressure, you're going to understand why there's really sticky issues that happen when you're talking about bosses or people within power. But right, so the first thing is to make the offer, right? Oftentimes men miss that part entirely. They don't make an offer, they just grab it. See, that's the big problem. So often when women are upset about something, it's because the man didn't make an offer, he just took. That's the real key, right? So how might that look, right? I'm standing at a bar, talking to somebody, smiling, laughing, right? And then maybe the guy grabs me in some way, right? Maybe he puts his hand on me in some way that is touching my personal body, my property, right? Maybe you're walking in the bar and a guy reaches out and grabs your ass, right? I mean, that's like, hold on, wait, that's my property. You didn't ask, you didn't get permission to do that. Those are the types of things. Or maybe a woman is sitting there working at her computer, right, in her office, and the guy comes over and starts touching her and massaging her neck or touching her back or, right, touching her, invading her personal space, invading her property without asking. You can see this all the time where people just reach out and grab you, right? Sometimes if you're in LA, in certain cultures, that might be normal. You just go, or if you're in Latin culture, right, where they might grab you and give you a kiss, okay? But with COVID going on and with all of this stuff happening, we don't know how comfortable or uncomfortable people are with physical contact. So we need to respect their boundaries. We need to respect their bodies. So that's what I'm talking about. When you go and make an offer, what does that look like, right? So if let's say I'm a man and I like that woman, I can say, hey, can I give you a hug? Hey, can I give you a kiss, right? You remember back in the day, men used to actually ask about that stuff. That's making the offer. They didn't just grab you. I remember when I was in Brazil, oh my God, what a nightmare. I was in Brazil, and that's just very much the culture. The men literally just grab you and like start trying to shove their tongue down your throat. And I'm like, dude, I don't even know your name. Like, get the hell off me. Okay. Mike is saying people are also animals, so they don't always act rationally. Mores and morals will always be essential to a healthy society. Yes. Now, but there's a caveat I like to say about that, because I don't want to give people, especially men, the excuse that, well, it's just an animal. I'm just an animal nature, so I act like that, right? That's bullshit, frankly. Okay, that's bullshit. All right. If they knew they were going to go to jail or somebody had a gun to your head, you're not going to act like that. Okay, you can control yourself. That is not an excuse. And that excuse has been used to excuse terrible behavior by men for centuries. And we don't need that excuse anymore. Men are perfectly capable of controlling themselves, just like you can control yourself when you're driving a car or you're eating food or you're purchasing or whatever that is, right? There's just no excuse. But having a clear boundary, knowing what that boundary is, that's what's important, right? As men, if you know there's a very clear boundary, you don't need to cross it. If you know that if you drive on the wrong side of the road, you're going to go smack right into traffic and get killed, you don't need to cross it, okay? Now, what happens, there may be times somebody is high on drugs, right? Alcohol, and then they do cross over into the wrong thing and they kill people and they end up doing something like that. Big issue, right? But in that case, they are not in their proper mind. Right? So this is why when we're talking about male-female relationships, this alcohol and that kind of stuff can begin to play a big part in what goes wrong. Right? So first of all, make the offer. You want to touch somebody? Make an offer. Be like, hey, can I hug you? Or even just open your arms and see if they walk into them. You don't even have to physically ask, right? You can make some kind of motion without physically grabbing them or touching them, right? And if they say, oh, I'm not really comfortable with that. I don't really want to get that close right now. COVID is going on, whatever. Respect that. Don't be like, oh, well, you're just being a bitch, or, some kind of, down on them about that because they don't want to be that close to you. Who knows what's going on in their life? Maybe they have health issues. Maybe their family members have health issues and they're trying to protect them, okay? So that's why we make the offer, and don't get offended if it's not received, if it's not accepted, okay? Because everyone has their own thing that they have going on. Now, there might be an offer, there might be a counter offer, okay? What's an example of this, okay? Let's say a couple is cuddling on the couch, they're just getting to know each other, right? The guy, is like, hey, can we take this further? Can we go to bed, right? And the woman might say, I don't feel like I really know you that well yet, but I don't mind if, maybe we go to second base, but not any further tonight, okay? So what is that? He made an offer. She made a counter offer. She said, I'm not comfortable with that yet, but let's just do this, okay? So he can accept that offer, right? Or if he wants, he can make another counter offer. But at that point, she's told him what she's comfortable with. If he tries to push past that point, then that's a violation, okay? Because she has given him very clear instructions about this is what I'm comfortable with. Don't push past that point. Don't be like, okay, well, now we're here and now I'm at second base and this is fun. Now I'm going to try to grab something more, right? That is a violation. That's theft. That's going beyond the boundary that she said she was willing and the agreement that she made with you. See? So what comes next? Mutual understanding. Right? This comes into play when two parties have different expectations of what the interaction is going to involve, right? So remember before I used the example and I said, if you think that I'm paying you $5 for my old lipstick, and I think that, I think that it's for something else, like my pen, right? We don't have a mutual understanding about what the exchange is for, okay? So this happens when men maybe take a woman out to dinner, okay? And they think, boy, I'm going to take her out to this nice restaurant, and I'm going to get lucky, and she's going to sleep with me. If they go into it with that's their expectation, you see, and they didn't tell her that, they didn't express her that, that's not her expectation. She's sitting there thinking, I'm going to let this guy take me out. I'm going to give him the opportunity to show off, to show me who he is, to show me like if he's the kind of man that I would want to be in a relationship with or date, right? Those are two completely different expectations of that agreement, right? The agreement is the offer to go to dinner, the acceptance of that offer to go to dinner, right? And what is the outcome of that? Totally different expectations. See? So how do we get to that expectation, right? You got to be honest. This takes a lot of humility and a lot of vulnerability for people. If you're like, and you know what? There's things that are issues on Tinder and other stuff like that. But one of the things about that is that people are actually getting pretty honest about what they want. And they're able to just say, hey, I want to get together and just have sex. I want to get together and just do this, right? So people are actually, in society, are actually getting a lot more clear and honest about what their expectations are, what they want. That's a good thing. I don't know that it's a good thing that people are, I don't know that it's helpful for people in the way in which people are just treating sex and stuff so casually, because I think that's actually creates even more loneliness. But the fact that people are actually being clear and explicit, that's a good thing. Hey, Courtney. So, and what is the fifth one? The fifth one is undue pressure. This is where we get into so much trouble when we're talking about, so when all of the stuff that really comes into play with the Me Too movement and sexual harassment and all of this stuff, this comes into play typically with this particular principle. Don't apply undue pressure to get people to do something, okay? So what happens? If you are in any way in a position of authority over somebody else, like you're their boss, that already exists. It is inherent in the relationship. That pressure is inherent in the relationship. That is something you have to understand. This is why I know a lot of people who say, I never date an employee. I just won't do it. I won't go out with them. They are right. This is the accurate thing to do, right? Because, and there's actually a law, there's actually a rule that lawyers cannot date their clients. Why? Because it happened back in the day where there was lawyers, especially male lawyers, right? I mean, this was like 100 years ago or so, right? So there's a lot of male lawyers. They would have female clients that were in the divorce courts, and they were helping them through their divorce, and they were counseling them, and they were telling them everything that they had to do, right? And that woman was relying on them and looking up to them for advice. And then they would end up in a relationship with that lawyer, with that man. And so the courts said, this is not a good thing because the relationship of that woman is already making her dependent on this man as her lawyer, as her protector, as her guardian. And this is like a paid relationship. This is a fiduciary relationship. We should not allow them to take it into sex because that can become violative, right? This is that principle of undue pressure. That's why they created that regulation. So anytime someone is in a position of authority, right, they're the person who is there, who's able to give you the job that you really want, right? You need to support yourself, you need to support your family, your break in the industry, whatever that is. Anytime that person is in that position of authority and is able to give you that job, or you're working for that person and they can fire you, you're already in a position of undue pressure, which means that you need to stay as far away from any kind of sexual offers, I guess you could say, right? Because that inherent imbalance already exists and you can't really get away from it. It's just, you know, that's part of the problem. I mean, you can try, I know, like, I definitely know some companies, right? If they find out that people who work together are dating, they may have both of them sign like an agreement. They have to say, this is consensual. I didn't feel pressured. I'm not blah, blah, blah. And they'd actually make you, the HR department will make you both sign a contract stating that, to really make sure that you're like really, really okay with this. And this is not a place where you're feeling pressured. this is such a real thing, right? This is also why how I talk about with children, right? Younger people, you cannot, there's always a imbalance there of undue pressure if someone much older is dating someone much younger. And we're talking about someone like below the age of consent. It's always going to be a violation. Hey, Maria. So those are the 5 principles that govern it. And once we understand what those principles are, right, the 5 principles that can govern all of our interactions, all of our relationships, sexual relationships with each other, then we understand how to behave in such a way where we won't be violating other people's boundaries, right? This gives us a positive way to interact. So how does that look when we have a positive way of interacting based on following those principles, right? If a man wants to go out with a woman, right, first check in your mind and say, is there some kind of undue pressure here, right? Am I this woman's boss or something like that, right? Then maybe this is not a good idea. Because if I'm in a position of authority over her, just that position itself could be applying undue pressure if I'm asking her to go out with me or to have sex with me. See? So you need to look at that relative position first. If that's not there, if you're fine, you meet this person out, you meet him at a bar, whatever that is, right? Don't just jump in and grab, make an offer. Can I take you out? Can I hug you? Can I give you a kiss? Make the offer. Don't just grab somebody and violate their body and their personal space without asking, because that is their property, right? And this also applies in each stage when you're moving forward, getting more and more intimate. Make sure you're checking in with that person. Are they okay with that level of intimacy? Are they okay to move forward, right? Especially when you're first getting to know somebody, because you have no idea, like, when you're in a full-on relationship, you're married, whatever, then you know each other well enough. You've already created that agreement together as to what's okay, right? So my boyfriend doesn't have to ask me if he wants to touch my butt, right? I've already given him agreement, but he is the only person who has that permission. No one else has that permission. I don't let anybody else do that, okay? Right? We have an agreement. So understand what those agreements are, but when you're first getting into a relationship, you don't have any of those agreements yet. Those take time to create, and you just have to go at the pace of whoever is the slowest person, right? At their comfort level, so that you don't end up violating them. And that's how you can create that exchange. Offer, acceptance, and these little mini steps that take you all the way to wherever you're going to end up going with this. Okay. And, and then the other part that makes a really great relationship is value exchange. That's the part that makes a great relationship. When both parties are, instead of being in a position of demanding an expectation, they're both trying to offer value to the other. They're both like, saying, what more can I do to make this person happy? How can I make this person smile? What more can I bring to the table? That's what makes a great relationship, right? And then make sure that you have communication, clear communication, so that you know that you both have the same mutual understanding of what's going on and what the expectations are, right? This is why, like in sex positive communities, they are very, very, very explicit, and you will get kicked out if you don't follow these rules. They say you really have to be super explicit. What are you comfortable with? What are you not comfortable with? What do you want them to do to you? What do you not want them to do to you, right? Like, you really have to express it and say what this is. That way you can have a mutual understanding. If you just assume an understanding, that's where you get into trouble. That's where you breach people's boundaries. That's where you make people feel uncomfortable and violated. So those are the 5 principles. If you follow those 5 principles, it's actually really easy to engage with the opposite sex and to walk into a relationship, right? When you just follow those simple 5 principles. You can have a very positive experience, and you don't need to be afraid that you're going to unconsciously hurt somebody, or that there's going to be some kind of backlash against you because you you put somewhat pressure on someone and maybe you didn't realize you were pressuring them. Maybe you didn't realize you're making them feel uncomfortable because, the woman oftentimes really struggles to express that to somebody in that moment. So always be asking. That's how you can know that you are, and there's different ways to ask, but that's how you can know that you're engaging in such a way that the experience will be positive for both of you, right? And that you're not going to jeopardize yourself and put yourself in danger of getting accused of sexual assault or harassment or violation if you follow these 5 principles really, really closely. And that's really, then those are the principles that we all want to, that's how we would wish to be treated, right? So anyway, that's that. That is what the Me Too movement is missing. Understanding those 5 clear principles of how to engage with the opposite sex in a positive, healthy way and be able to move forward with, those kind of fun dating things that we enjoy. But without having to have the fear and worry that comes with thinking, oh my God, am I going to get in trouble for this? Am I going to, be in trouble for creating a violation or something like that, right? So that's it. I hope you guys all have an amazing day and that, have some fun today. And remember, those 5 principles apply to everything. They apply to business. They apply to, your advertising. They apply to everything. So really learn them. They will make your life much happier and your interactions with others much happier and more blessed. So have a beautiful day. And yes, Mike, I agree with you on that too. Yes, right? Because those things are violations in our bodies as well. So, all right. Take care, everyone.